All right, we're live. Sorry, this is only the second time that I have done this, so, apologies if things are still a little messy. I'm definitely still not a pro at this, but I think I want to stream every once in a while. I did it that first time after planting a steel garden, that video, and I enjoyed it, and so I think I want to do this every once in a while, and I feel like it's an opportunity to revive an old dead series on this channel called Randall Rambles. The last time I did one of those videos was back at the end of 2020. Like, I guess the finale of the series was the Cutie Honey video. But I decided to stop doing those because I just felt like what I wanted to do with the channel, I just kind of like outgrew unscripted videos, especially with like how much I was editing and stuff. Editing them and whatnot, it just didn't make sense to keep like making them unscripted, especially with like that Cutie Honey video. I'm aware that there's a couple of things that I say, even though that the video was unscripted, because I didn't do any research and I was just spouting things off, I actually end up making assumptions about Cutie Honey and the magical girl genre as a whole that are factually incorrect. And so, when the video is when that much editing is put into the video, there's no excuse not to do some research and write a script, especially for the scale. And I didn't know the video was going to be that big of scale. But that's just a prime example, I think, of why I stopped doing the Randall Rambles. It was just the things I was doing on the channel had just outgrown unscripted content. And I just couldn't justify doing it anymore. But I thought if I ever did bring the series back, that it would just be what I titled Whatever I Stream. And so that's what we are doing now. Yeah, hope you guys enjoy these. I want to do I want to do them every once in a while. Maybe one like after I release a video. I might do another one before I release another video because I don't know when I'm going to release another one. If you saw my community post, you know that the one I just released about Asley dying might be my last one for a while. I don't have a script ready. Between my day job and the documentary, I kind of want to break from YouTube, so I'm putting it on the back burner. And we'll see. We'll see when I have time to make another one. I'll work on it slowly over the course of the next couple of months, but I do plan on releasing one or two before the end of the year. But I'd really like to put a priority on just doing things that aren't just filming. In my documentary, there's things that I have to do. If you've been following my social media, specifically my Twitter, you know that I've been going through a box of old film slides that Billy Tripp gave me that is like archival photos. And so stuff like that has to be done, at night when I get home from my day job. And if I'm doing stuff like that, I can't be working on a YouTube video. So, yeah, I'm just going to put a priority on that for the foreseeable future. And if I get another video done, I get another video done. If I don't, I don't. But it is what it is. With the housekeeping out of the way, I just kind of wanted to come on here and stream and talk about some stuff. Originally, I was going to stream like right after I did the Asley dying video. I'm glad I didn't because there's been some really good news that's come out since then over just the July 4th weekend. There's been good entertainment news coming out. So that's made it, I think, a more interesting stream. So we'll get off my letterboxd here and just start talking about it. I don't even know if anybody is watching right now, but we'll just go anyway. Let's see. I wanted to talk about the announcement that Panty and Stocking 2 is happening. If you're a longtime viewer of this channel, you know that Panty and Stocking was one of the first videos I uploaded to the channel. I started this channel back in 2018. And in that first year, towards the second half of the year, I made what was at the time my longest video on Panty and Stocking. It's was one of my favorite shows ever. It still is one of my favorite shows ever. It's definitely like in the top 10, maybe even top 5 anime that I've seen. And I did not think that this show would get a second season. Even when if you go back and watch that old Panty and Stocking video, I talk about the end, about the possibility of it getting a sequel. And if I recall correctly, I was pretty not positive about it. I was pretty, pulled up some evidence, which at the time pointed to, it probably won't get made or whatever. And especially at this point, I thought if anything was going to happen to it, it would have happened in 2020, the 10th year anniversary of the show, like something would have been announced. But that obviously didn't happen. And after that point, I was just kind of like, 10 plus years, a show getting canceled and coming back, it doesn't happen often. I can't think of any other shows that have, done that, being canceled and then like over 10 years later come back. So I didn't think it was going to happen at all. So when I saw on Twitter that Studio Trigger was hyping up an announcement at Anime Expo, I thought that maybe it was a continuation of one of their newer series, Little Witch Academia. They just did a thing for Disney, Star Wars Visions, which was like a compilation of different animated shorts. They made 2 shorts for them. So I thought, oh, well, maybe it's an announcement that one of those shorts is getting turned into a series. That would make sense. But in the back of my mind, I was like, maybe it's Panty and Stocking 2. Like, I didn't want to get my hopes up, but I just had a faint glimmer of like, maybe this is it. Maybe this is finally the day. And I'm not going to lie, when I saw that the Triggers panel at Anime Expo had started, I kept my eyes glued to Twitter because I knew there was going to be people live tweeting about it and giving updates. So first off, I'm very excited for Cyberpunk Edge Runners. Hiroyuki Imaishi, who also directed Panty and Stocking, isn't just one of my favorite anime directors. He's one of my favorite filmmakers, period. I think he's incredible. Everything he does is exhilarating and exciting and just so entertaining. And I just look forward to anything with his name attached to it. And from what I hear, the first episode they showed off of Cyberpunk Edge Runners is really great. So I'm really looking forward to that. But none of that matters. None of what anything else they talked about in the panel matters, because at the end, they announced that they're making a new Panty and Stocking. I'm guessing it's a season. We don't know if it's a whole season, if it's going to be a movie or what. All we know for sure is that they're making something. Apparently, a trailer was showed off at the expo that showed, if you've never seen Panty and Stocking, at the very end, there is a post-credit scene where the character of Stocking kills Panty and cuts her up into 666 pieces. And the main villain of the series explains that the rest of the characters are going to have to go on a scavenger hunt to collect all 666 pieces and stop him from opening up a portal to hell in another city. So that's how the series ended. It was semi-serious. You could tell they were trying to set up some kind of story, but you could also tell they were doing it in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. But that was how the series ended, and it said to be continued in next season, and that was December 2010. So the trailer picks up, as far as descriptions have been told on Twitter. It hasn't been released publicly as of the airing of this stream. But as far as descriptions go, Panty reassembles herself from the 666 pieces, and Panty and Stocking hold up 2 middle fingers, and it says "New Panty and Stocking Project" or something like that. Again, this trailer has not been available publicly, but yeah, I kind of lost my mind when I saw that because, like I said, I had not very much hope at all, like close to 0% hope that Panty and Stocking would ever get a sequel. If you've ever watched the show, you probably want a sequel. I don't know anyone who has watched the show who watched it and said, yeah, I'm glad that ended. Most people who watch it wanted to see it keep going because it was not really an ongoing story. It was more of an episodic comedy thing. And so it was something that could have ostensibly just kept going. And from what I understand, they had ideas for multiple seasons. Like even after the show ended, they had an entire manga, which I actually have, just give me 1 second to pull off my bookshelf. A manga right here, just full of stories in it that I guess didn't make it into the show. So they had plenty of ideas for future seasons. So, knowing all this, anyone who has ever been interested in Panty and Stocking has always wanted a sequel. So it's just awesome, incredible news. And I just lost my shit when I saw that. And yeah, apologies to my followers on Twitter, because that entire night I was just tweeting about it and retweeting other people tweeting about it, and just having a blast. But yeah, I mean, I just can't believe it. Every time I think about it, it just seems surreal. And I'm pretty tired of, sequels and, reboots, and, I don't want to get into it because I feel like that's a discussion that's like had in every film circle ever. That's just kind of the media culture we live in, which anime hasn't really been on board with that whole like make a sequel or reboot to everything for a while. But in the past 5 or 6 years, they have gotten more on board with that. And we'll see that a little bit more once I get done talking about Panty and Stocking. But even with the rise of more like anime sequels or old anime shows being revived, like there's even a classic anime. I'm going to butcher how you say this, but Yursei Yatsura or something like that. She's a really classic anime character. I watched one of her movies because it's directed by Mamoru Oshii. But she's being revived in a new series, so it's kind of becoming a thing in anime now that older shows are starting to be revived. But even with that, I just did not expect Panty and Stocking to ever get a sequel, because from what I understand, it was just a total flop. Like from what I understand, it just wasn't successful in Japan at all. So yeah, I really can't wait for even if it is just a movie, if it's not a full TV season, I'll be happy, man. I think I speak for a lot of Panty and Stocking fans when I say that. I love the characters. The soundtrack is one of the best, I would say, of any TV show that I've ever seen. Like, the soundtrack is legit awesome. I listen to it pretty regularly, and I'm especially listening to it now that this show is on my mind. The dub is amazing. In my video, I highlighted how not only is the dub awesome and perfect for the show, but it's actually far superior to the Japanese audio. If you've never seen Panty and Stocking before, I highly, highly, highly recommend watching the dub. In fact, I recommend against watching the subtitled version, because I can count on one hand the number of people who've watched Panty and Stocking, that I personally know, who've watched Panty and Stocking and come away not liking it, and all of those people watched it with the Japanese audio subtitled. It's just that big of a difference. The Japanese audio is not that funny. It's kind of cringe. There's some people who prefer it over the English dub, but they're honestly in the vast minority. The English dub makes the show for me. It makes it hilarious. The visuals, the soundtrack, everything else is incredible, but without that dub, the experience is incomplete. So I would recommend watching in dub if you've never seen it. If you're not fully convinced, you can go watch my old video I made in 2018 where I put a bunch of comparisons between the dub and the sub to show you just how vast the difference is and just how much better the dialogue and jokes are in the English dub. And with that being said, I really hope they revive the old English dub cast for the show. I know Funimation is not super popular anymore for good reason. They've kind of been bought out multiple times by corporations, and they're just a shadow of their former self. But I really hope that the old Funimation dub cast gets back together. I know the entire dub cast can't get back together because, number one of the voice actors is dead. I can't recall his name at the moment, but the guy who played a character called Corset, who was the main villain, like he was like the Emperor Palpatine of the show, you might say. He's no longer with us. He passed away. It was earlier this year or last year, I believe. I think he was most well known for playing Frieza in Dragon Ball, if I recall correctly. I'm not that familiar with Dragon Ball, so I would not know. But yeah, so he can't come back. Another thing that I don't think will happen is there was a white guy Christopher Sabat, I think his name was, who was playing a black character in the show called Garterbelt. I don't think that's going to happen again. They'll probably get, a black guy to play the black character. But other than those two things, I really hope they reassemble the original dub cast, because the two voice actresses that played Panty and Stocking are just iconic as the characters. There are, certain voice actors that just are those characters, and that's who the voice actresses are for Panty and Stocking. I know Jamie Marchi is the one who plays Panty. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of the voice actress who plays Stocking, but they, at the very least, have to come back. I would really love it if they came back along with the voice actor for Breathe and the voice actresses for Scanty and Knee Socks. But again, just really hope that all the original dub cast comes back, other than, of course, the obvious exceptions, which I just listed. Speaking of the exceptions, one thing I do hope changes about the show is, if you've never seen the show, there's a black character named Garterbelt. He's in the full title of the show. The full title of the show is Panty and Stocking with Garterbelt, because it's two angels and they live with this Catholic priest, and the Catholic priest is the black character in question. And, the show came out in 2010, and Japan and anime specifically hasn't had a great track record of black representation. And unfortunately, Garterbelt is no different. And I'm just going to pull up a picture here, a couple pictures, so you guys can see. It's not great. It's not the worst, but, the lips and the nose are probably, to say they haven't aged well is an understatement. It wasn't, this wasn't exactly a good design choice in 2010 either. And I want to make something clear. I don't think the character of Garterbelt himself is problematic at all. If you've never seen the show, I would encourage you to watch it. The character of Garterbelt is hilarious. He's a great character. He's just as funny as the other characters in the show. He's not a stereotype at all. They never poke fun at his race or anything, as far as I can recall. I do typically rewatch episodes here and there every year. And as far as the episodes that I'm very familiar with, he's not stereotyped whatsoever. It's just his character design. Literally, all they have to do is change his character design, get rid of, the caricature that's portrayed here, the bubble lips, and it'll be fine. And I have a feeling that they're going to end up doing that they will probably change his appearance and tweak his appearance to make it more acceptable. And the reason I say that is because, this is Studio Trigger, and they have gotten better at black representation. Here's an example. Here's a black character from Promare. He was a side character. He didn't get a lot of screen time, but as you can see, definitely far from the caricature that, this is, it's a pretty far cry. So I'm hoping that Garterbelt, when he comes back, looks a little bit more like this and less like this, because I love the character. Okay. I really do. And that's why in my original video in 2018, I think that's why this character design didn't bother me, because I loved the character so much that I didn't even, it didn't even occur to me that this was, a problem. Obviously, I'm white as well, so it doesn't affect me. And, at that time as well in 2018, I was not as sensitive to that kind of thing. But, now I would definitely say, if there's one thing in the show that could change, I really hope that gets tweaked, because it's definitely not a good reflection on the show. And, I would hate to see people deterred from watching it, because of something like this, because the show is just so great, and this is not great. So I'm hoping that they change Garterbelt's design, make him more like this, not a caricature, and, then it won't be a problem. The show will be fine. But yeah, that's about all I have to say. I am just so stoked. I've been thinking about it constantly since it got announced. The same night, I stayed up and rewatched a couple of episodes of the show. I'm ready for it. It's probably going to be a year or two before it comes out, and going to be even longer before it gets a dub. And fingers crossed that that original dub cast comes back. But I am so ready. And last thing I'll say, if I had the power, I would get in contact with Samuel L. Jackson, because we know he likes anime and he's been involved with anime projects in the past. I would love it if Samuel L. Jackson played Garterbelt in the dub for the new series. I feel like that would be perfect. I feel like Garterbelt is the kind of character that Samuel L. Jackson, to be quite frank, I feel like Garterbelt is a parody of Samuel L. Jackson. If you've never seen Panty and Stocking, there are tons of movie parodies in the show. It's not hard to believe that they based Garterbelt, at least his personality, off of Samuel L. Jackson. I'm sure he'd be more on board with it if they tweaked the design of the character, that's for sure. But that would be my fan cast. If that character is going to get recast in the dub, bring Samuel L. Jackson on. I feel like that'd be perfect, but it's probably a long shot. But just really quick, I also wanted to talk about some of the other stuff that got announced at Anime Expo. I have not been a super huge anime person the past couple years. Anime has really moved away from the stuff that I like to see. I like to see super creative, artistic stuff. The main reason that I like to watch anime is because I've always, since I was a kid, questioned why animation is not utilized to tell more mature stories. And Japan, by far, has a monopoly on utilizing animation for more mature stories. And so I like seeing more mature stories. I like seeing them told creatively and artistically. That's why Satoshi Kon isn't just my favorite anime director, but my favorite director ever. He encapsulates most of what I love about movies and everything I love, about animation. And all of my other favorite anime directors reflect that as well. Mamoru Oshii, Mamoru Hosoda, Hiroyuki Imaishi, they all just have a very distinct visual style. When you watch one of their shows, you know exactly what you're getting. They are tour directors, basically. Although I don't think you can exactly apply that to Imaishi, because he hardly ever writes any of his shows. I think he may have written one of his projects. But either way, even with him not writing his stuff, he has a very distinct and unique visual style that is all his own. And that's what I like seeing in addition to, stuff that's geared towards more mature audiences. And unfortunately, I feel like anime now more than ever is just churning out factory products. Like they are just churning out the same shit over and over and over. And for an audience that I don't consider myself to be a part of, okay? And that's just where I'm going to leave it. I could get into a whole rant and people would get, anime fans, terminally online anime fans would get angry at me. But I'm just going to leave it at that. Anime for probably the past 4 or 5 years hasn't been putting out a lot of stuff that I really like to watch. So it's cool that at Anime Expo this year, there were a couple of announcements of things that I'm actually interested in watching. The first, obviously, being Panty and Stocking with Garterbelt. This Kotaku article hits the nail on the head when it says that Panty and Stocking was the announcement that blew every other anime news out of the water. Because in case you weren't following it, like the hour that news of this broke, it hopped to number 3 on trending, which surprised me so much because I didn't think Panty and Stocking had that big of a fan base, and I feel like a lot of people felt the same way. But I guess over the 12 years of its existence, people have slowly, heard about the show and watched it and become fans, but, they haven't really been active or vocal about liking the show. And I could probably even count myself as one of those people. I didn't watch the show until 2016. I had heard about it, for, probably 2 years prior to that, but I just never watched it until January 2016 was when I watched it, and I just fell in love with it. But anyways, we'll move on from that. Another thing I'm really excited for is the new Trigun adaptation. Trigun was one of the very first anime that I ever watched when I got into anime back in like 2012, 2013. It was one of the first anime I ever watched. I saw it on Netflix and I thought it looked super cool. And it was. It was super cool. So when I saw that, on Twitter, it being announced there was going to be a new one, I was, looking forward to that, seeing what they do with it. And it's being animated by Studio Orange, who animated Beastars and Land of the Lustrous. Haven't seen Beastars, have seen Land of the Lustrous. Great show. And I'm pretty confident with, the story that they'll be able to tell with this character and with this universe. Not familiar with the Trigun manga, so I'm not going to speculate as to what the story would be. I don't much, I don't put a lot of stake in that. What I do put stake in is this living up to the legacy of the original anime, because the original anime has so much style. A big part of that is the soundtrack, man. If you've never listened to the soundtrack to the original Trigun, it is so good. It's got that, because Trigun is sort of like Cowboy Bebop in that it's a sci-fi Western. And so it has that sort of twangy Western style music that you would expect, but it also has some like really awesome electric guitar throughout the soundtrack, most notably its opening. And it just helps make the show that much cooler. Of course, Vash, the Stampede's original character design is super iconic and cool as well. A lot of people complain that they changed it to this in the new anime, which I understand, but I'm personally not up in arms about. Do I like it as much as the original design? No. But I also understand that this is trying to attract a new audience. And if they stuck to the original design, especially with 3D animation, like, could you imagine how ridiculous the tall spiky hair would look in 3D? It just would not look or feel modern. And I feel like they probably felt like a lot of people would dunk on it, So ultimately redesigning the character was probably a smart move from, a standpoint of getting new people on board with the show. So I don't have a huge issue with it. Do I prefer the older design? Hell yes, 100%. But I think this is fine. I'm more concerned with, how good the show is going to be. And like I said, I have pretty good confidence that it's going to be good because Studio Orange is a good studio. I love Land of the Lustrous. Haven't seen Beastars, but I've heard great things about it. So I'm sure they'll pull through and make something really good. I'm just concerned that it won't be as... what's the word I'm looking for here? As stylish, have its own voice as much as the original, because the original was like up there with Cowboy Bebop in terms of like science fiction anime from the 90s. Yeah, those are some pretty big shoes to fill. So I have confidence, but not confidence enough that it's necessarily going to live up to this legacy of the original, but we'll see. I'm certainly looking forward to it, and I'll certainly watch it when it comes out. There's other stuff too that I don't really care about. Bleach, I was never a fan of. I tried to get into it when I first got into anime like 10 years ago. Mob Psycho, the hot take, I don't care about Mob Psycho. I stopped it during season 2, which just got too ridiculous for me. Don't know what that is. I have never been able to get into JoJo's, another hot take. Don't have anything against it. I don't know. At some point, somebody is just going to have to force me to watch it, and then maybe I'll get into it, I guess. I've just never been able to connect with it. Chainsaw Man, this is another one that I'm really looking forward to. When that week got announced, I started to look forward to it, and actually haven't, watched this or revealed that anime won't censor any of the balls-to-wall violence. That's cool. But yeah, I'm super stoked for Chainsaw Man. Mappa is another anime studio that's putting out really good stuff. They put out that Dorohedoro anime on Netflix, and that was one of the only anime that I liked from that year. I think it came out in like 2020. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that. I think that's everything. But yeah, certainly some cool stuff, Trigun and Chainsaw Man. But the main point here, Panty and Stocking, they're fucking back. With all that out of the way, let me just close out some of these tabs. With all that out of the way, I also wanted to talk about 2022 music because, my last video was music themed and my original plan was to make the stream all about music. I was going to do music tier lists, talk about 2022 music. Obviously it's different. I changed my plan, but I still do want to talk about some 2022 music because I feel like there's been a lot of stuff coming out that I want to talk about. And in particular, the first thing I want to talk about is this little band called White Ward. White Ward is a black metal... Oh, this is not the album. Let me go back. We need the full album here. Okay, White Ward is a black metal band that I first started following when their debut album came out in 2017. They're sort of shoegaze black metal mixed with dark jazz. And man, let me tell you, their first album was super promising. And their second album was one of my favorite albums of 2019. It was so good. I have never, ever stopped listening to that album. Every once in a while, especially on rainy days, always come back to that album. Their second album, Love Exchange Failure, so good. And they just came out with a new one, False Light, and it is just incredible. I don't necessarily think it's better than their sophomore album, but it certainly lives up to the promise of that album for sure. On top of the just fantastic, serene noir sounds that this band has built up over the past two albums, they really push the boundaries in this third album, False Light. And in some cases, I don't want to say go off the rails because that's usually used in a negative sense, but they really do push the boundaries and experiment in some of these songs. A lot of the longer cuts on here, Leviathan and False Light, Phoenix, are absolutely incredible. I would go so far as to say that Leviathan might be the best song that White Ward has ever made. It is just incredible. Then you have all these tracks in the middle are just... They just really experiment with what they can do with their sound. Salt Paradise is a lot more of this mellow track with these very somber, clean vocals. This is the only one that doesn't really work for me. It's just one that I skip pretty much every time I listen to the album now. But it is certainly an interesting experiment. And I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a bad song, just certainly the weakest one among the bunch. Phoenix is a great song. The standout on this one is its incorporation of synths, which the band has never used before, but there's some sort of synthwave music during the intro and outro of the song. Silent Circles plays with, volume, sounds, silence and stuff like that to just fantastic effect. Love this song so much. Cronus, this was released as their second single when this album was rolling out. And initially I didn't care for it too much because it felt like White Ward on autopilot. But now listening to it in the context of the album, it's really grown on me because you have so much experimentation here in the middle. And then Cronus feels like a return to normalcy. So the track has really grown on me since it first got released as a single, and now it's one of my favorite on the album. And then, of course, you've got the title track, which is just amazing. You also have these two instrumental interludes, which I don't think they've had an instrumental interlude since their debut. So that was really surprising to see. But bottom line, this is an incredible album. If you are into metal music and you've never listened to this band, I would highly encourage you to do so. If in 2017 and 2019 they were a band to watch, with a band of a lot of potential, at this point they've lived up to that potential, and they're a band that you should definitely get into and be a fan of now, because otherwise you're going to miss out on some great releases, because this is by far one of my favorite albums of 2022, probably in my top 3 if I was making a ranking. Just absolutely incredible. And I just wanted to hop on here and at the very least talk about them because they are just an incredible band. They're also from the Ukraine. So if you want to go to their Bandcamp and buy some merch or something, you'd be supporting, people from the Ukraine. I don't know anything about their situation. I highly doubt they are currently living in the Ukraine, considering they just dropped an album and are currently promoting it. But again, I don't know anything about their situation. I don't know if they're involved in the conflict at all. But I do know that they are from the Ukraine. So if you want to support a Ukrainian black metal band, here's your opportunity. Go wild. And, it's a good one to support because they are fucking awesome. Let's see. What else can we talk about here? Creator just released a new album, and it goes hard. It is great. Their output since the 2000s has been fairly consistent. I would still describe it as hit or miss. Sometimes the albums are really good. Sometimes they're okay. This one's really good. I want to say it's their best one in a long time. I'm not sure. I'm not for sure if I like it better than Phantom Antichrist. But I would put it up there with Violent Revolution. I think it's really great. And it's obviously better than about half of their 90s output. But that goes with that goes without saying for almost any thrash metal band. But yeah, they went hard on the paint on this album. It's pretty relentless all the way through. Not going to lie. I haven't listened to it as much as I would like, mainly because the White Ward album dropped around the same time, and that just kind of took priority. So don't have a whole lot to say about it other than I was really impressed with it, and it's really cool. Let's see what else. Rammstein came up with a new album, and I think I like it better than the last one. Their last one for me was very spotty. It had some songs that I really loved on it. But there were other songs that I just didn't care for at all. And the songs that I didn't care for at all made up about a third, maybe in half the album. This album, on the other hand, as you can see from how many tracks I've liked, pretty solid all the way through. I don't think there's any songs on it that are as strong as their previous album, their self-titled or the untitled album. But I do like the album a lot. Like as a whole, what they're doing with it, it's a lot more somber and a lot more reflective, I guess is the word. There's certainly your classic, Rammstein themes in there, but it's certainly a lot more of a mature album than I think they've released in a long time. And I thought it was just a good album. I just thought it was enjoyable from front to back. From what I hear, it hasn't been received too well. People have been sort of mixed on it. But as for me, I enjoyed it enough. It was certainly not as, energetic or not quite as, like I said, quality as those few songs on their previous album. But, I liked it enough. As you can tell, I'm not a music critic at all. I don't know how the fuck to talk about music. That's why my channel doesn't center around music, guys. One album that I haven't listened to yet is this new Miseration. They're a melodic death metal band. If you're into melodic death metal, you probably know who Christian Avelstam is. He got famous for being the voice of the band Scar Symmetry. He left Scar Symmetry and he splintered off into 5 different side projects. This is one of them. They've been gone for 10 years and they just all of a sudden just drop a new album out of nowhere. So honestly, I haven't even listened to the whole thing. The couple tracks I have listened to are fine. They're okay. But honestly, none of Christian Avelstam's side projects have lived up to the quality of Scar Symmetry's music. Solution 45 was promising, but then they came out with their last 2 albums, and those were just garbage. And we haven't heard from them since. And honestly, if they were gonna keep putting out music like they were, then good riddance. That's another band that I'd really like to hear from again. Scar Symmetry. I think it's really ironic that they released this first part of a science fiction concept album trilogy, and they're like, don't worry guys, these are going to be they're going to come out fast. You're not going to be waiting years for the conclusion of this. And that was back in like 2014. We haven't heard from the band since. So really hoping that band, releases new material at some point. Let's see. New Ghost album I enjoyed. It's Ghost for the past couple of releases. Well, I guess the past two. Their albums have had to grow on me because usually I'll listen to them at first and I'll be like, they've gone too campy this time. I don't really care for this. But I'll listen to it again and I'll be like, okay, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And, the more I listen to it, the more it grows on me. And it was certainly the case with Imperia. I do think it's their weakest release, probably since they're sophomore. But a lot of the tracks here have won me over a lot. I hear a lot of people, like, dissing the track 20s. And I totally understand because I kind of hated this song the first couple of times I heard it, but it's growing on me now. And I actually, it might be my favorite track on the whole album. I know it's super campy and like over the top, but I also kind of love that about it. I also love Hunter's Moon. Watcher in the Sky is great. Little Sunshine, I'm still not super crazy about, but I do like it. I don't dislike it as much as I did when they first released it, but it certainly has grown on me. But yeah, new Ghost album I think is pretty good. Denzel Curry, well, we'll talk about that one in a second. Let's talk about Kendrick Lamar first. Obviously, Mr. Morale came out. I don't have a whole lot to contribute to the conversation here. If you're expecting me to come out with some sort of like great perspective on this album, I don't have it. All I can say is that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it better than Damn. But I haven't listened to it a whole lot. And part of that is, it's a double album. It's super long. It takes a really long time to listen to it. So I have only listened to it all the way through, like maybe twice. And the other reason I haven't listened to it a whole lot is, unlike some of his previous albums, like Good Kid, Mad City or Damn, I feel like this one doesn't have a lot of I was going to say singles, but tracks you could, just pick out of it, out of context and like still enjoy it as its own thing. It has a couple in there that, I could do that with, like in 95 especially. That's the one that I listen to the most off this album. But for the most part, I feel like a lot of these songs really are only best enjoyed within the context of the album. I feel like that's why I prefer Good Kid, Mad City to Pimp a Butterfly, because To Pimp a Butterfly has like such a strong narrative that there's a couple of songs that I can pick out, from its track list and just throw it on a playlist and enjoy all the same. But most of the tracks on that album, I feel, only are as effective as part of the album holistically. And I feel like The Big Steppers is another album like that. So I haven't listened to it nearly as much as some of his previous work, but it is really good. I do really like it. The only thing I would say I didn't like about it was We Cry Together. That is that track is a chore to get through. It's not an easy listen. It's unpleasant. Not even really sure what the point of the track was. Sure there was one, don't get me wrong. But certainly my least favorite track from the album. But other than that, I enjoyed it. Can't say too much other than that. It's good. It's Kendrick Lamar. What else can you expect? Wanted to talk about that to say, I think I like the new Denzel Curry album better. Denzel Curry is just, if you listen to him, you already know this, but he's just super solid. Like his entire discography is just super solid. Dude's never released anything close to a mid album. The guy just constantly puts out great stuff, and this might be my favorite album from him. Like, it is so good. It's certainly a lot more introspective, a lot more somber, and atmospheric. Is that the word I want to use here? Lo-fi. It's certainly less like energetic and full of bangers as his previous albums were, especially that last album he put out, Zoo. That was just full of bangers. stuff that you could throw on, in the car or, I guess at a club or whatever. I wouldn't know. I don't go to clubs. But this is certainly more scaled back in that sense, but it just works. It is so good. I listened to this album so many times, so many times. The first like week or two it was out, and I still come back to it regularly. Like there are very few of these songs that I ever skip when I'm listening to this album. Often, this is one of those albums that I'll pick out a song to listen to, and unless it's in a playlist of other things, I will just end up listening to the rest of the album because every song on it is just so good. Yeah, that's it. Denzel Curry, he's the GOAT. So yeah. Okay, let's see. What else do I want to talk about here? This Gorillaz track right here, I've never been a fan of Gorillaz. I know there's probably that's a hot take. Like a lot of people are going to be upset about that. I don't have anything against them at all. They've just never been for me. Even their most popular songs, I usually listen to them. Like I'll enjoy them in passing, like if they come on randomly, But as far as listening to them by choice, I listen to a Gorillaz song like one time, and I'm like, that exists. This song though, I really like this song a lot. Cracker Island. I just think it's great. I think probably it has to do with it being, all the electronic elements on it. I really like electronic music a lot, especially high energy electronic music. And this is very, not necessarily high energy, but it's definitely a head bopper, one that, one that makes you get up and move. And I just really like the song a lot. It's the first Gorillaz song that I have really latched onto, and I'm really enjoying it. If they come out with a new album, if this is like a teaser for a new album, then I'm certainly looking forward to it. To get back to metal, we got to talk about my favorite album of the year so far, Meshuggah's new album, Immutable. This really blows their past couple of albums out of the water. Don't get me wrong, I really liked Koloss. And I really liked The Violent Sleep of Reason. Though, if I'm being honest, The Violent Sleep of Reason has aged poorly for me a little bit. I used to really love it, and now I just like it. I certainly think there's quite a few tracks on that album that I skip frequently and find myself not really wanting to listen to. Immutable, on the other hand, I think is their best album since Obzin. And Obzin is my favorite album from Meshuggah. This album is just incredible. Like, I really enjoyed the singles. I'm trying to remember what the singles were. Like, the album, to me at this point, is like one cohesive unit. So at this point, it's been so long. I lit it... Light the Shortening Fuse, Abysmal Eye, and I Am That Thirst, if I recall correctly. I liked all the singles. If I recall correctly, maybe I Am That Thirst or Light the Shortening Fuse I can remember not being too crazy about. It was one or the other. But in the context of the album, I like all of them. Like, this album is so good. Broken Cog is such... It might be the best opening to any Meshuggah album ever. The way, I just love its creativity, especially in contrast to the way their last album opened up with Clockworks, and now this one's Broken Cog, and it does sound like, almost like a broken riff playing and, stuck, almost like a piece of machinery, trying to operate, and, there's a wrench in the machine, and it's dun-dun-dun-dun. That kind of deal. And then of course, the vocalist, whose name I can't recall right now, comes in with these, these whispered, hushed vocals that, break out into his signature screaming. And it's just a super eerie, atmospheric track that is just the perfect tone setter for the album. And yeah, I think it might be the best opening song to any Meshuggah album ever. Then The Abysmal Eye comes in. I liked this song when they first released it as a single, but as a follow-up to the opening track, it is incredible. The way this song hits you like you're being punched in the face after, Broken Cog sets up this atmosphere, this quiet, not always quiet. There's the part where he, screams, and that part of the song is louder. But for the most part, Broken Cog is sort of like this atmospheric track. Then after that really eerie, creepy atmosphere, bam, you just get hit in the face with the Abysmal Eyes opening riff. And it is just fantastic. I love the song even more now, and it's just incredible. Light the Shortening Fuse is also really good. The one thing that I really like about it is its lyrics, which are about how social media algorithms, if I recall correctly, this is what it's about. Social media algorithms tend to feed people into more and more extreme content, keep people in a bubble. It commentates on, people having political opinions, and they're really just spouting someone else, that they saw online. And the song is just sort of expressing this general frustration with the way social media algorithms have sort of guided people towards more and more divisive political content. And I think that's based as fuck. And that's all I got to say about that song. It's a good song, but the lyrics just make it for me. Phantoms, I am aware that a lot of people really love this song, but if I'm being honest, it might be my least favorite on the album. Not to say that it's bad. It's far from it. I think it's a good song. But the first half of the song for me doesn't work nearly as well as the second half. I think the second half of the song is great. Love it. Love it. But the first half of the song, I'm just not too crazy about it. So sorry if that's a hot take, I guess. But it is the song that I skip most often when I'm listening to this album. Literature Marks, on the other hand, this is like their album Nothing. This is like a return to form from Nothing. If you love the album Nothing, you're going to like this song if you haven't listened to this album already for some reason. It's just this slow, menacing, hulking mass of a song that just, in contrast with a song like The Abysmal Eye, which is very like fast and furious, this one is more like, a slow moving Goliath, but it is nevertheless incredibly badass. God Sees in Mirrors, also an incredible song. I really love the sound play on this song. Where the vocalist, belts out the lyrics, omnipotent God he sees in mirrors, and they play with the sound in such a way that it sounds reflective. Man, it's so cool. Again, great song. They Move Below, probably the best instrumental track that Meshuggah has ever made. Super long too, and I think the length really benefits it, because usually it's something like past tense over here, and it's usually not even 5 minutes. It's usually like 2 or 3 minutes, and it's just like some, quiet, atmospheric picking. But this moves from that into the, expected Meshuggah chugging, and it's just fantastic. If I was going to get somebody into Meshuggah who, was sort of averse to extreme metal, I'd probably show them this song, and if they liked this, I would get them into more from there. And PSA, I haven't released my Doom video yet because I haven't hit 6,000.66 subscribers. But I talk about this on there. If you like the Doom soundtrack, you need to listen to Meshuggah, because all the Doom soundtrack is just Meshuggah with electronic and industrial elements. That's it. If you want music that sounds like the Mick Gordon's Doom soundtrack, just listen to Meshuggah. That's all I got to tell you. If you want a starting point, start with this album. It's a great album. And then go from there. In my opinion, Meshuggah does not have a bad album. Okay, besides their debut. Their debut isn't the best. And it's definitely a far cry from what the band became, even in their next album, which is far more iconic. But other than their debut, you really can't go wrong with, just blind picking an album from this band. So if you are a big fan of Mick Gordon's soundtrack to Doom and Doom Eternal, listen to Meshuggah. That's all I got to say. Kaleidoscope, Also love it. Black Cathedral. This is another kind of low point on the album for me. Not that I don't like this as an interlude. I really like what it's doing with sort of like, dissonant sounds, and, there certainly has sort of like a black metal feel to it. But I just feel like there was a missed opportunity for Black Cathedral to transition into I Am That Thirst, because I Am That Thirst continues on that sort of black metal-ish vibe that Black Cathedral introduced, but there's just no coherent transition at all. Black Cathedral just kind of stops after 2 minutes, and then I Am That Thirst picks back up. And as a result, Black Cathedral, I feel, feels incredibly out of place on the album. But had they taken the opportunity for it to sort of more seamlessly transition into the next track, I feel like it would have been much better. Like I said, certainly don't dislike Black Cathedral. I think it's a really great instrumental piece. But I think they could have done more to make it cohesive within the album. The Faultless and Armies of the Preposterous are both great. Armies of the Preposterous is such a fucking badass and based song. It's might be the angriest the band has ever been in a long time, and for good reason. The lyrics are basically just a massive, I don't want to say roast because that would be putting it extremely lightly, a massive just ripping into neo-Nazis, basically. Just a straight condemnation of the rise of neo-Nazis and the far right, thanks to, online hate groups. Just going full throttle, tearing into these motherfuckers. And so the song sounds very angry as a result, for good reason. It is just a fucking badass song. Originally, when I read the lyrics, I thought it was about like anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, those kind of people. But there were certain parts that made me think, this might actually be about the far right. And I was correct, because I think there was an interview where they confirmed it was about the far right and neo-Nazi. So badass, based. Meshuggah's always got great political commentary in their songs, especially as of late. And yeah, this album, just fantastic. Past Tense, I'm not going to lie, is a closer that I can take or leave. It's the kind of instrumental they've done before where it's just like atmospheric, like quiet picking on a guitar. And I think it's better than a lot of the other ones they've done, but it's honestly something I could take or leave. And it's usually not something that I listen to when I'm listening to the album in full. That being said, the album as a whole, I think is just incredible. I think it's their best album since Obscene. I say that because Obscene, the reason it's my favorite is because I very rarely skip a song when I'm listening to that album. The only song that I ever skip is Electric Red. That's the only one that I think is kind of okay. And this one, I'm on the same wavelength with. Very rarely do I skip a song when I'm listening to this. I also think that one of the strengths of Obscene that this album also has is variety. Obscene, I feel like, has a more variety of sounds to offer. One of the big criticisms of people who don't really care for Meshuggah is that the albums get too monotonous. Like, yeah, the grooves and the heaviness is super cool, but at some point, they just want a little bit more. And I feel like this album has enough experimentation. Well, not necessarily experimentation. It's certainly Meshuggah as we've gotten to know them. But they certainly experiment within the bounds of their own sound in this album for the album itself to have more variety than their past two releases. And so for that reason, I would say it's my favorite album of theirs since Obscene. It's fantastic. And if you don't listen to Meshuggah, you should. There's some other stuff I guess I could talk about. Undeath's new album was kind of underwhelming. There are a couple songs that I really like from it, but it was underwhelming. Zealand Ardor's new album I really liked. If you're not familiar with them, they're a black metal band that mixes black metal with blues and soul music, soul gospel music. It's super cool. I like them a lot. They're very good bands. New Charlie XCX album, not going to lie, when I first listened to it, I thought it was really good. Well, not really good, but I liked it. And then I listened to it again, and I was like, "Huh, this kind of sucks." That's my thoughts on that. Pusha T album is good. "Let the Smoker Shine the Coops," I think, is the best song he's ever made. It's incredible, and I can't stop listening to it. Blah Os Nord, this new album they've come out with. Gonna be honest, I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I've listened to a couple of tracks from it, and you get the gist. It's basically music to listen to HP. It's basically music to listen to while you're reading HP Lovecraft. If you want a soundtrack to accompany your reading of Call of Cthulhu, this album's got you covered right here. You're welcome. But I think that's all I want to talk about as far as music. Shout out to Yule, who came out with the album Glitch Princess. That's really good pop record. But yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about. I really just wanted to talk about 2022 releases as an excuse to talk about the Abysmal Eye. I mean, not the Abysmal Eye, Meshuggah and White Ward. That's pretty much it. What do you think of Blade? I'm sorry, I haven't been reading the chat this entire time. I apologize. I just seen Panty and Stocking clicked what's up. That too loud, be sick. Let's see. Favorite hentai? I don't know if I want to discuss that on stream. I don't want my entire channel to get monetized. I mean, demonetized. So I'll save that. But I'll gladly answer that question in a comment. And I have done so before. What do you think of Blade Killer? I don't know who that is. Panty and Stocking seasons 2, 3, 4, and 5, just like my uncle said. Hope Boba 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 Bo gets revived. I've never seen Boba 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 Bo, but I hope you get your dreams granted. Last thing I wanted to go over on this stream, I thought would be fun. This Rolling Stones list of the greatest superhero movies. They actually changed the picture. They had a much better picture on this. Now, this is much worse than what they previously had. I don't know why they changed it. But I just thought we should talk about it because it's a really bad list, and it might be fun to roast on stream. You don't want money? Question mark. I thought it would be fun to roast it on stream because it's just such a fucking bad list. The Rolling Stone has been putting out these lists recently, and they're just all fucking bad. They put out a hip-hop list recently, and I'm not about to sit here and pretend like I am some kind of hip-hop expert. I dabble in hip-hop. I am pretty unfamiliar with a lot of hip-hop, to be quite honest. But with like the half or so of the list that I was familiar with, I could tell it was bad. And then, going online and seeing the reactions of people who actually were more into the genre than I was, confirmed my suspicion that it was just a really bad list. They released another one, I think just prior to that too. I can't remember what it was. And it was just abysmal. And this one is no different. This list fucking sucks. Step aside, MC. Oh, this is an ad. Okay. Wait. Oh, this isn't right. This isn't the right one. Greatest movie superheroes. This is not the right list. Okay, hold on. What are you doing? What are you doing? Give me 1 second. I gotta find it. Superhero movies. Come on. There we go. Sorry, I had the wrong list pulled up. Okay, this is it right here. This is the sucky list, okay? One thing that I really dislike about these lists that Rolling Stones does is they never list their criteria for making these lists, and especially for a list like top 50 superhero movies, You need to have a criteria for what you consider a superhero movie, because as you'll see, if you've never seen this list, first off, you should probably end the stream early because your life is better for not having seen it. But if you haven't seen this list, you'll see when we get into it that there's some questionable picks here as to whether or not it's even a superhero movie. So they really needed to list their criteria for what they even consider a superhero movie. And they didn't do that. And that just frustrates me to no end, because I feel like the list would be far less controversial if they just listed that criteria. That being said, let's dive into this pile of crap. Number 50, starting right off with a controversial pick, Zack Snyder's Justice League. And they have a whole justification here. I don't necessarily disagree with it being on there. I respect it. Personally, I wouldn't put it on there, but I understand why you would. What I do take issue with is that they put this on here as the only Zack Snyder superhero movie. That's what I take issue with. If you were only going to put one Zack Snyder movie in a list of 50 greatest superhero movies, why wasn't it Watchmen? That's probably the best movie the guy has ever made. It's certainly the best superhero movie he's ever made. And I just don't understand why they chose Justice League over Watchmen. Like, the opening credits sequence to that movie is better than the rest of his superhero movies put together. So that's, the first frustrating thing. 49, Ghost Rider. This is kind of laughable. Like, why would you put that on here? But again, it's not something I take huge issue with. I kind of respect it, honestly. Ghost Rider's a badass character. We need another movie from him. It needs to be set in hell, and it needs to have a soundtrack of Meshuggah-style metal music. I will die on that hill, and if need be, I will make the movie myself. Megamind, I don't have an opinion on it because I haven't seen it. It's going to shock a lot of people. I'm sorry. I just never got around to seeing it. Megamind came out 2010. I was 13 when this movie came out. I thought I was too cool for animation. I'm sorry. That's just the way it was. I just have never gotten around to catching up on it. I'm sorry. Infrared Man. Don't have an opinion on this either. Never seen it. Maybe it is one of the best superhero movies ever. I wouldn't know. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. This is the first problem we run into where, the Legend of Guardians, the Owls of Ga'Hoole. Yeah, seriously. Some of the stuff they picked for this list, you would think they might as well just go ahead and pick that. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. This is the first thing we run into where it's like, what exactly was their criteria for a superhero movie? This isn't the one I take most issue with, though, because I can see why they would pick this one. It's very comic booky, so I don't take a huge amount of issue with it. And if you are going to count it as a superhero movie, it definitely deserves to be on the list. So not going to say too much about this one. The Old Guard, on the other hand, I'm sorry, but what the fuck? I haven't seen The Old Guard, but it certainly does not seem like a superhero movie whatsoever. And everyone that I know who has seen it thinks it sucks ass. So I don't know why it's on this list. Do they even give a justification for why it's on here? Some of these movies, they don't. They just throw them on the list, and they're just on the list. They just describe what the movie is, and that's it. Yeah. This is another one that they just straight up don't even justify putting on the list. They just describe what it's about and just leave it at that. They'd say, long live this new franchise, and that's it. It's like, what the fuck? Batman the movie being on here is goated, is very respectable. Respect the hell out of that. It should be on here. Adam West forever. Thor should not be on this fucking list. And this isn't even the only Thor movie that's on this list, okay? This should not be on the list. This is one of the most forgettable mid-tier MCU movies ever made. Like, when I think of great MCU movies, I don't think of Thor. It is just so generic, so bland, so boring. Not that there aren't good elements about it. Certainly Tom Hiddleston is Loki. This was Chris Hemsworth's first movie as Thor, and obviously that's like his claim to fame. He's literally found success doing nothing else. And also, the movie looks pretty good. It does. I think it's aged pretty well. I rewatched it recently, I think back in 2019 in preparation for Endgame. The movie looks pretty good. I think it looks better than a lot of like phase 2, phase 3 stuff that came out. And even a lot of phase 4, if we're being honest. But other than that, super bland movie, should not be on this fucking list. Dear God. Lego Batman movie, I'm going to make more people angry. I haven't seen that either. I'm sorry. The Avengers absolutely should be on here. In fact, it should be higher. I would put this in the top 25 at least. I think the first Avengers movie is the GOAT. I think it's awesome. Yeah, no, that's all I got to say about it. Dark Knight Rises, no issue with that. It should be on here. Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, no issue with that. It should be on here. It's Sam Raimi. It's goated. Captain America: The First Avenger, don't have much issue with that either. It's a great origin story, great, good movie. Not the best MCU by far, but it's good. The Batman, again, no issue here. It hasn't even been a year yet, but this movie's already goated. It's fantastic. What I do take issue with, though, is that they straight up don't even justify putting it on the list. This is another one where they just describe the movie and call it that. I do think it should probably be higher up on the list, considering the other things underneath it. But, you know, I am glad to see it here, because it should be on here. Here's one where it's like, what the fuck were you thinking? This isn't even a superhero movie. Tank Girl. Now, I've never seen Tank Girl. I don't know if it's something that I would like, but I was just talking with some friends about this the other day. Who the fuck talks about Tank Girl? Like, this one, they actually did try to justify putting on the list by saying that it continues to be debated by feminist scholars and genre film geeks to the present day. Who the fuck talks about Tank Girl? I heard about this movie one time. I don't even remember where I heard about it from. I heard about it one time. I looked it up. I thought, that looks interesting. And I haven't heard about it since then. And I've talked to a couple other people. They say the exact same thing. What is it doing on this list? Like, the movie made no impact at all. It's certainly not better than some of the movies it was put above. Well, I can't say that for sure. I haven't seen it. But it seems to me, from like the aggregate scores I've seen on IMDb, Letterboxd, and what have you, most likely is not better than some of the movies it was put above. And I'm just befuddled as to how they considered it a superhero movie. It certainly doesn't look like one. Maybe it is one. Again, this is a movie I have not seen. Take my opinion with the greatest salt. Discard everything I say if it's just dead wrong. But this was a pick that just absolutely befuddled me. Another one that befuddled me, Ant-Man being this high. If I was going to put Ant-Man on this list, it would be like bottom 40. Okay? What the fuck is it doing at number 35? Above the Batman? Above Adam West Batman? You're going to put Ant-Man? Again, this is another very mid-tier MCU movie. It's certainly better than its sequel, but there's really only a couple of things that really work about it. Other than that, it's just pretty forgettable. This is one of those MCU movies that takes a lot from Iron Man and is worse as a result. Like, it's just a very safe MCU movie. Very forgettable. Outside of a couple of sequences, of course. The action sequences in Ant-Man are pretty good. But it certainly doesn't deserve to be this high up on the list. The Suicide Squad, I can understand why you put it on here. Blade 2, another one that I really agreed with. Blade 2 100% should be on any list of best superhero movies you're putting together. Blade 2 is fantastic. Unbreakable, again, another one that I understand. V for Vendetta, again, what the fuck did they qualify as a superhero movie? I know that this movie is based on a comic book, but anyone who has seen this movie can tell you it's not a superhero movie. And if their criteria for best superhero movies was that it also had to be based on a comic book, or, you know, maybe that was just one of the criteria, then why isn't Sin City on here? Because Sin City is certainly one of the best comic book movies ever made. But this isn't a list of the best comic book movies ever made. This is the list of the best superhero movies ever made. So why the fuck is V for Vendetta on here? You know, I don't understand the logic. V for Vendetta, it's a good movie, but I wouldn't qualify it as a superhero movie. And let's just say it's the rare superhero movie that seems to get more present as the years go by. Again, I just don't see it as a superhero movie at all. Shang-Chi should not be this high. if you're putting it on the list, I can respect it to an extent. It's certainly a unique superhero movie. Not number 30, though. Not on a list of 50. Not number 30. The Crow, also another one that I don't understand putting it on a superhero list. I've only seen it one time, and that was like 10 years ago. But it certainly didn't stick out to me as being a superhero movie. I don't know why it's here. Batman Begins obviously should be here. I would even say it should be higher. Here's one that I respect and also take issue with at the same time. I do agree that Hellboy should be on this list. I disagree that it should be Hellboy 1. I thought that Hellboy 1 and 2 were of the same caliber. Because, I mean, I watched them at first when I was like a kid. And then there was a long time between me watching them again. And then I rewatched them in, I think, 2019. And discovered that the first Hellboy has not aged very well at all. There's a lot of licensed music, like pop and rock music from 2004 in it that makes it super dated. The special effects are dated. The villain is super boring. There's a audience stand-in character who's like this milquetoast white guy who you just want to punch in the face the entire movie, who kind of ruins the entire experience. It's not a bad movie by any means. It's a pretty decent superhero movie, okay? But it is far, far, far outpaced by its sequel, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, and that is the movie that should be on this list. If you're only going to put one Hellboy movie on this list, it should be Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. Literally, all of my positive memories about Hellboy came from The Golden Army. It is such a good movie. If you haven't seen the Hellboy movies in a long time, I would encourage you to rewatch Hellboys 1 and 2 back to back and just see the vast difference, the vast improvement that Hellboy 2 was. It is truly the superior movie, and it befuddles me as to why they picked the first Hellboy. My theory is that they were like me before I rewatched the Hellboy movies. They probably haven't seen them in a long time and just thought they were both as equally good. However, I would argue that's not the case. Darkman, haven't seen it. I need to get around to it at some point. I can understand why it's on here because it is Sam Raimi, and from what I understand, it's comic book-esque, superhero-esque. Rocketeer, also haven't seen it. Batman Returns, absolutely should be on here. Totally respect it. I do think it should be way higher, considering what is in the top 10, which we will get to. Deadpool, again, super agree. Totally agree. Should be on here. Not a big fan of Ryan Reynolds anymore, even though this movie kind of catapulted him to his current fame. Kind of sick of him at this point. But I rewatched about half the movie with friends here recently because we just wanted to turn on something while we, hung out. And honestly, the movie still holds up super well. It's still so funny. And even after 6 years, still feels fresh. I still think it's a great movie, and I'll stand by it. It should be on here. RoboCop, this is another one. It's a great movie, absolutely 100%. I just don't understand why you'd put it on a list of superhero movies. I can get it if you stretch the logic a little bit. Like, he certainly has an origin story, and I guess the sequels would be more superhero movies in terms of tone. I don't know. I haven't seen them, but RoboCop is a pretty dark movie. When I watch RoboCop, I don't get superhero vibes. That's not the vibe that I get from RoboCop. So again, this is another befuddling pick to me for that reason. Certainly a great movie. Don't know if it qualifies as a superhero movie though. This one makes me upset. Over all of those great movies that we just scrolled past, they put fucking Doctor Strange above all of them at number 21. Doctor Strange, like Thor and Ant-Man, is a dead average MCU movie. Doctor Strange is a carbon copy of the first Iron Man, literally the only difference being that he's a wizard, and at the end, instead of having the generic CGI battle, there's that really clever, climax at the end where he bargains with Dormammu, which is the highlight of the movie. Certainly the best thing of the entire movie. But everything else is so mid. I don't remember a damn thing about this movie. I haven't seen it since theaters. The only things that were memorable about it was the visuals during the action scenes and the climax where he bargains with Dormammu. That's it. Other than that, I remember it being story-wise a carbon copy of the first Iron Man. In fact, in this movie, he's basically the same character as Tony Stark. It's just a super safe, paint-by-the-numbers MCU movie. It should not be at number 21. And that's all I got to say about that. Superman 2, no issue here. Goated movie. Batman Mask of the Phantasm, no issue here. Goated movie. It should be a lot higher considering what we're going to get to. Captain America Winter Soldier, again, no issue here. X2, no issue here. One of the best superhero movies for sure, especially of the 2000s. Avengers Infinity War, again, no issue here. I think it should be higher considering what's in the top 10, but we're going to get to that. Guardians of the Galaxy, no issue. Spider-Man, no issue other than it should be in the top 10. It's 100% should be in the top 10. X-Men Days of Future Past, again, good pick, great movie. Spider-Man Homecoming, I do think this is way too far up the list. You're putting it above X-Men 2 and the first Spider-Man. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to disagree with that. Spider-Man Homecoming was a movie that I really liked upon first watching in theaters, but as the years have worn on, I have grown to like it less and less to the point where I think it's just slightly above average in terms of MCU canon. I feel like the movie has no, and this might get me some heat, but I feel like this movie has no identity of its own. Part of the great thing about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, and even Spider-Man No Way Home is, to a lesser extent, much lesser extent, is that I feel like those movies have an identity of their own, not just stylistic in terms of filmmaking, but in terms of a story. Spider-Man Homecoming can only be enjoyed in the context of something else. Okay? The movie presupposes that you're already familiar with the character of Spider-Man. So right off the bat, you had to be familiar with some other Spider-Man media, because the origin story isn't going to get explained to you, which is fine. I don't need an origin story in every superhero movie. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of Spider-Man's core characteristics are just kind of assumed. It's not a good introduction to the character. And on top of that, the character himself is kind of buried under MCU-isms. Like, he's buried under the universe that he exists in. Like, his father figure is Tony Stark, and, you know, the villain of the movie is stealing alien weaponry from another Avengers film. And it just... the story of the movie is too bogged down in your knowledge of other movies that I feel like it rips the story of any unique personal identity. And on top of that, the film stylistically is like just like a Ferris Bueller's Day Off type high school comedy. And it's, you know, very directly trying to be one of those. Like, it's not even shy about it. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like, in every sense of the word, I feel like this movie does not have a unique identity of its own. It's an okay movie. It's fine. I don't dislike it, but over the years, I have come to see it as like slightly above average. You know, I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of people who really like Spider-Man Homecoming, and I'm sorry to make you upset, but that's just how I feel about the movie. I know it's like passionate Spider-Man fans that like say it's like, you know, this is how Spider-Man should be. I don't have any stake in that. All right. I'm just saying my opinion about the way I enjoy it as an experience. It should, with that, all that being said, it should be much lower. It should not be above some of the movies in this list. Number 11, Iron Man, again, should be higher. It should be higher. It's one of the best movies in the MCU. Considering what comes after this, it should be higher. Oh, God. The Incredibles, again, no problem here. 100% should be in the top 10. You know, if not, you know, at least the top 20, top 25. Absolutely incredible movie. It's just fantastic. The best Fantastic Four movie that isn't a Fantastic Four movie. Don't have to say, I don't want to say too much about it. Everyone loves The Incredibles. Everybody knows it's great. Here's where we run into issues, okay? In the top 10, Wonder Woman, number 9. Okay, I don't dislike the movie Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman 84, I don't like at all. I think it sucks. The first Wonder Woman, however, is one of the better DCEU movies. Okay, I enjoy it. I think it's pretty good. I think Gal Gadot gives a decent performance as Wonder Woman. You know, it certainly has some scenes in it that have become iconic to, you know, the superhero genre. But number 9 out of a list of 50 in the top 50 superhero movies, no. No. If I was making this list, it would be somewhere in the middle. Okay, this movie is fine. It's perfectly enjoyable, but it's also very forgettable outside of a couple of scenes. You know, it is okay. And I was talking to my friends about this. There aren't a lot of female superhero movies, and certainly not a lot of good female superhero movies. So my theory is they put Wonder Woman up this high to make up for the lack of female representation on this list. Like, no one in good conscience can put like Elektra or Catwoman, you know, on a list like this. Not even a movie as recent as Black Widow, you know. They're just bad, you know. It can't be denied. They're just not good movies. So, you know, you get a decent female superhero movie like Wonder Woman, and I feel like maybe putting it up this high was like their gesture of like trying to make the female representation on the list more prominent than it would be otherwise. But I'm sorry, it just, if that's the case, if that's what they were trying to do here, it just rings so dishonest. Like, Wonder Woman is not in the top 10 superhero movies ever made. I'm sorry. I'm going to die on that hill. Another one that's not in the top 10 superhero movies ever made, Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok is fine, okay? I really loved it when I first saw it in theaters. But over the years, again, as with Spider-Man Homecoming, it has soured on me a bit. I don't think as much as Spider-Man Homecoming, but I do think this isn't as like spectacular as I thought it once was. The humor is pretty funny. The character dynamic of Thor and Hulk works really well. Jeff Goldblum is great. But honestly, from a visual standpoint, it is every other Marvel movie. A lot of people tout this as like, oh my God, it's so visually different from the rest of the MCU. It's so colorful. Yeah, when it's all CGI. The most colorful shots of the movie is when everything is a green screen. When there's an actual set, it looks washed out in like gray nothingness. Even the colors that are present on the sets just look so faded. Like it just looks so drab. It's incredible how stark the contrast is between, you know, CGI shots like this and the shots where they're actually standing in a live action set. Like, incredible contrast. Visually, the movie just has soured on me a lot. And I don't know. Overall, I don't think it's as good as I thought it was. Don't get me wrong. I still think it's good. And it's certainly the best Thor movie by far. Yeah, it's certainly not the number 8 best superhero movie of all time. I take fat issue with that. Dark Knight at number 7. Definitely don't disagree with it being in the top 10. Wouldn't disagree with its placement if some of the stuff in front of it wasn't there. Number 6, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Don't disagree with this. It should be in the top 10. It is a goated movie. Number 5, Superman. Don't disagree with this. Fantastic movie. Great movie. Goated movie. Wouldn't have any of the other superhero movies that came after it if it was not for this movie and Christopher Reeve. Goated movie. Avengers Endgame, don't disagree with. I know there's people who don't really care for this movie, who think it's mid, but I still really enjoy it. I think it's great. I think it's a great conclusion to the story that they built up over 10 years. I loved the hell out of it when I saw it in a theater. I rewatched it like 2 times at home that same year. I really loved it. Haven't seen it in like 2 years. Don't know if my opinion would change. But as of right now, I'm still saying I love this movie and I have no problem with it being number 4. Number 3, Logan. Agree. One of the best superhero movies ever made. Hands down. Hands down. Nobody's going to deny that. Logan is one of those superhero movies you can show to people that don't like superhero movies and they'll probably still like it. Like, it's just that good. Spider-Man 2 at number 2. Yes. 100%. All the way, agree with this. Spider-Man 2 should always be in the top 5 of any best superhero movies list. It is good. I don't have to preach to the choir here. Anyone who's seen Spider-Man 2 already knows this. And then we get to fucking number 1. Look, I'm going to be honest. I understand this movie means a lot of things to a lot of people, okay? I'm white. It didn't mean anything to me personally. Okay, I understand that. I'm acknowledging that. And I understand for a lot of people this movie, Black Panther, meant a lot of things to people. And that's great. That's awesome. I'm happy for you guys. And I will go so far as to say that if Black Panther was somewhere else in the top 10, like maybe the bottom 5 of the top 10, I wouldn't even take that big of an issue with it because I understand culturally it was a big deal. However, as a movie, it is not the number one best superhero movie ever made. Like, it is just laughable. Like, what the fuck? And their explanation for why it's number one is some of the most pretentious bullshit. Okay, let's read some of this, okay? It proved that you could successfully fuse a filmmaker's sensibility into the MCU without compromising the corporate bottom line. First off, I don't think there's anything visually unique about this movie at all, other than, the fact, obviously it takes place in Wakanda, things like that are obviously going to affect what's on screen. But in terms of the camera and the directing, I don't think it's that different from any other MCU movie. Feel free to prove me wrong if you feel passionately about that. But I don't agree with this take at all, that it fused a filmmaker's sensibility into the MCU without compromising corporate bottom line. I feel like that applies more so to like Avengers Infinity War and Doctor Strange 2. Black Panther, a robot could have fucking directed it. And this is, oh my God, it gave us Shakespearean tragedy in comic book cosplay, complete with a conflicted hero and a multi-layered villain via Michael B. Jordan. Okay, I agree with this partially. Okay, first off, Chadwick Boseman was goated. I want to make that clear. No disrespect to him. Great actor. Love the dude. He was Black Panther. He was the Black Panther. And Michael B. Jordan's Eric Killmonger was the best part of the movie, no doubt, 100%. But to say it was Shakespearean tragedy and comic book cosplay, like, there weren't even critics saying that about The Northman, and The Northman had Shakespearean elements in it. What kind of pretentious bullshit is this? But I'm going to keep going, okay? Most of all, it proved that superhero movies could be about something more than just entertainment. They could reflect, and represent the real world around us while still transporting us to some other place entirely. This I can see their logic behind this statement. Okay. It reflected, important social issues, important parts of American history, obviously it meant a lot to people of color, the black community, that's all well and good. I don't want to say too much about that because, again, it doesn't personally affect me. I'm not, I guess, part of the group that, was mostly affected by the movie. Like, I don't want to sit here and speak for another group of people, that I am just not, that would just be dishonest of me. I respect that 100%. This statement I respect 100%. But the next thing, they could be more than just a roller coaster ride. They could, in fact, be something close to cinema. Are you kidding me? They have to reference the Martin Scorsese thing in the most cringeworthy way. And out of every movie they could use to reference the Martin Scorsese thing, they choose Black Panther. If anything, Black Panther is one of the movies that Martin Scorsese would use as an example in what he said. Like it's Black Panther. Again, I don't want to diss on the movie too much. It's fine. It's an okay movie. But again, I feel like it's one of those ones that about half of it was played way too safe for me to really love it, both from a visual standpoint and just from a story standpoint. Certainly, a lot of the things with Killmonger and, it had to deal with race and things like that. That stuff was great. Liked that stuff a lot. But like the first half of the movie, like went on this long triad about this subplot with Andy Serkis as a villain that made no sense and did not affect the second half of the movie at all. Black Panther himself as a character was a fucking nothing burger. He was such a good and interesting character in Civil War. And then in his own movie, they just barely give him anything to do as a character, other than, obviously fight. And those are my two main issues with the movie that's really bring it down for me. I haven't watched it in a really long time. For all I know, I could rewatch it and like it a lot more. And again, I respect the movie's legacy. I respect what it means to people. I respect the impact that it has had culturally. That's awesome. Respect to Chadwick Boseman, obviously. I just cannot get behind it being number one on this list. And again, the reasoning here, it being Shakespearean, and something close to cinema, is just so fucking pretentious. It's just pretentious bullshit that I don't agree with at all. If you were going to be this pretentious about a superhero movie, at the very least, you could make it about one like fucking Logan or The Dark Knight, one that I could at least somewhat understand, using that kind of a language about. But like, Jesus Christ, man. I don't know. I guess that's all I have to say. Again, no disrespect to the movie, no disrespect to the actors in it. I think it's a fine movie. It's an okay movie. Don't have any issue with it being on the list at all. Like I said earlier, I would even respect it if it was in the bottom half of the top 10. But number one, yeah, I don't agree with that at all. Man of Stick, yeah. Let's point that out real quick before we leave this. All right. It's Superman 2. So to show how like thrown together and just like thoughtless this list is, they left a typo in. It's let's get back to Superman 2. Even the man of Steak needs a break sometimes. Steak. I don't think that was intentional. The key for L and K are right next to each other. They just left it in there. Shows you how much thought and care was put into this list. I feel like for lists like this, they just pull somebody random. That's just kind of like, oh, I want an easy assignment this week. Oh, okay, well, we're making a top 50 superhero movies list. You want to make it? I've only seen like 4 superhero movies, but sure, I'll take a crack at it. Like, I feel like that's how this list was made, man. I feel like that's probably how most of these lists are made. But yeah, that is that. That is the Rolling Stones top 50 superhero movies list. It's a joke. It's trash. It's bad. It needs. If this was being, I feel like if this was honest and truthful at all, it would need some massive reordering. And if they wanted to really justify all the placements on this list, again, they should have put their logic behind the placements under each listing, but they don't. On a lot of the movies, they just say, oh, this is what the movie was, and they move on. They don't even justify its placement on the list, and most importantly, they don't even cite their criteria for what makes it onto the list. If they had just done that up front, I don't even know if people would have taken as much issue with this list as they have. But as it is, this list sucks. It stinks. It's funny. It's laughable. And that's all I got to say about it, I guess. And that is also all I had plans for this stream. I don't really like ending it on such a negative note, but I also don't have anything to talk about. And it's like 9:40 now where I'm at, and I should probably just go ahead and end it. So I appreciate everybody tuning in, if anybody did. I don't know if anybody's watching this.